Hey everyone, if you haven't been keeping up with Diablo 4 announcements, today we're going to go through all of the new features or lack of features coming in Diablo 4, which are new changes from previous games, and they are actually pretty surprising, especially the last few. Now, we learned in a recent interview that players can earn 3 things by playing the Diablo 4 beta in the coming weeks in March. By reaching Kyovashad, the capital city of Fractured Peaks, you can earn the title Initial Casualty, which is a bit of a funny title, and if you reach level 20, you can get the title Early Voyager and also get a cosmetic item, which is a backpack which holds a cute little wolf pup, which is called the Beta Wolf Pack, serving as a cosmetic item only. So there's a few rewards for you if you are planning on playing the beta this March. Now, we also learned that only 3 of the 5 playable classes will be available during the early access beta on March 17th through March 20th. Those 3 classes are the Rogue, Barbarian, and Sorceress. And during the open beta on March 24th through 27th, all classes will be available, including the Druid and Necromancer. Now, one of the most massive changes coming to Diablo 4 that we just learned about is that armor will also reduce magic damage taken, a role that was reserved for resistances in past Diablo games. Just recently, we learned that armor will provide 50% of its reduction to magic damage as well as its regular reduction to physical damage. Now, the amount of armor items provide is directly correlated to a new system called Item Power. Item Power will be shown on an item's tooltip to represent its power. Think item level, like in World of Warcraft if you've played that. The higher the item power, more armor is going to be provided by that item. And the higher level the monsters you slay, the higher item power the items they will drop, and therefore they'll have more armor. Now, monsters are also going to have this same armor, which is new for Diablo games, and it will scale with their level. Of course, the developers need to be careful here to ensure the player's power will outscale the monster's armor, so that the game doesn't get too difficult as you progress. And if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Diablo 4 content. What's also pretty surprising about Diablo 4 is that there will be no runes nor rune words at launch. During BlizzCon 2019, runes and rune words were displayed like the rune Amen and the rune Ko, as well as what appears to be an affix that rune combination creates, which is different from Diablo 2. But developers have stated that they will not be in the game at launch and plan to include them later on in a post-launch patch. This news, like the absence of set items, is slightly disappointing because rune words are just so much fun. I imagine it's hard to implement rune words since they were done so well in Diablo 2, but also they want to improve them in Diablo 4, maybe by listing the rune word recipes in game or balancing the rune words a bit more. So it can definitely be very challenging to implement, I imagine, and so understandable if they want to take their time on it. Another new feature coming to Diablo 4 is that open world maps will be preset, not randomized like in Diablo 2. However, dungeons will be randomized using Blizzard's dungeon level random generator from Diablo 3, which will feature over 140 fully randomized unique dungeons which will be instanced for just you and or your party. To make dungeon crawling more seamless, going from one level to the next will not require any loading screens. Now, this is really exciting because every Diablo game has those loading screens so far, whether it's going from one level of a rift to the next one, or in Diablo 2 from, level 1 to level 2, you always had that loading screen, however short it might be, but seamless, no loading screen dungeon experiences will be in Diablo 4, so I'm really excited to see how that feels. Now, within dungeons, you can even encounter random events, and you can affect what will happen in future dungeons. I'm really excited to see what exactly that is and the different sort of non-linear progression that comes from these type of events. Now, also in dungeons, you can farm a specific item slot of gear, for example, gloves, within specific dungeons, which will change regularly, giving you a bit of direction when you're trying to farm gear. So I imagine a certain dungeon will probably display the item slot, and so you can seek out the specific dungeon you're looking for the type of gear slot that you want to replace or upgrade. What's new with Diablo 4 is that the world will be larger than ever before, with regions 10 to 20 times larger than any region in prior Diablo games. What's cool also is that we'll be exploring areas of Sanctuary that are mostly never before seen in any other Diablo game besides the area around Caldeum, which we did see in Diablo 3. By comparison, you can see how much of the world of Sanctuary we saw in Diablo 1 on screen, Diablo 2, Diablo 3, and what the playable area will be in Diablo 4. So really cool to see that we're going to have much more area to explore and that it's different. Also new in Diablo 4 is dynamic weather, which includes day and night cycles. We're going to see how that affects the environment, the monsters, and the player visually. And what's also exciting is that certain class skills can actually change the weather temporarily. Now, I'm thinking something that the druid has might be able to do that, but excited to see what those class skills actually are when we get closer to release. There's also going to be 6 total zones within Diablo 4, the Fractured Peaks, Skazglen, Dry Steppes, Kyrgyzstan, Hawazar, and no Diablo game would be complete without Hell. Blizzard has also stated that more zones could be added post-launch, so excited to see what may come out in the future. Now, what's cool is that the open world will constantly have events you can encounter, from escort quests to defending key areas from attackers, and of course world bosses. And there's even going to be a player versus player dedicated zone, which is called the Fields of Hatred, which we'll get to a little bit later. Now, what's pretty shocking is that there are over 100 different settlements, towns, and strongholds planned for Diablo 4 on release. Towns are where players can find that iconic waypoint from all the Diablo games. You can find quests, vendors, and of course other players to trade with. You can even inspect their gear or form a group with them. Strongholds are a really interesting new feature coming in Diablo 4. These are locations that are overrun by monsters, which you'll have to find on your own. They're not going to be marked on the map, which need to be cleansed, sort of like the Den of Evil, right? Once cleansed of all monsters, these strongholds will turn into a friendly town, actually with a waypoint, vendors, quests, and even sometimes unlock a new dungeon entrance. So definitely worth discovering these different strongholds. And these strongholds are going to be instanced or private for just you and your party until they are cleansed. Now, if you join a group, that party leader's version of the stronghold will be used. So if they cleared it and you didn't yet, you're going to get the cleared version of the area, and vice versa. If they didn't clear it, you're going to clear it again with them. So this sounds like a really exciting new feature, and with over 100 different strongholds, I'm really excited to go see all the different things that can be unlocked with them. Now, also coming in Diablo 4 are shrines. Now, what's cool about shrines is that they've been in past Diablo games, but Diablo 4 shrines are slightly different. There are 3 types of shrines that we know about so far. The Artillery Shrine, which increases your attack speed and causes all attacks to summon holy arrows down on your enemies. The Lethal Shrine, which causes all your skills to deal more damage and critically strike. And last, the Protection Shrine, which makes you invulnerable and unstoppable, which means you can't be stunned, slowed, or otherwise incapacitated. There's also some talk about Cursed Shrines, which we actually did have in Diablo 2. Poison Shrines, Explosive Shrines, these actually, upon use, poisoned you, did fire damage to you, and so Diablo 4 might have their version of a Cursed Shrine, but we don't know too much about that yet. Now, the campaign is going to be a 35-hour non-linear experience, which allows you to pick freely between acts after completing the prologue. And what I thought was one very interesting new design choice coming in Diablo 4 is that many of the quests players will encounter will be sort of more down to earth, so to speak. It's going to involve helping the simple folk in their villages, rather than some extraordinary adventure involving taking down a great king or, some other major undertaking. It's going to be sort of, if you think of it like a beginner MMO, right? Like, cleanse my farm of rats, So kind of interesting to see how it sort of gradually builds up in this campaign in Diablo 4 with this type of design philosophy. What's also going to be returning in Diablo 4 are lore books. This is a feature added in Diablo 3, which served as a storytelling device. Players could find these tomes of lore during their adventures, and upon picking them up, a audio-only narrative would begin telling the story of a character in the world of Diablo. Now, I personally liked the lore books because it really helped, in my opinion, immerse yourself in the world of Sanctuary, sort of bring that world to life. And lore books also, of course, give you some XP. So even if you don't care about the lore or the narrative, they're worth picking up, and then you can just hit spacebar to turn off the audio if you so please. Now, what's interesting about Diablo 4 is that Diablo, the actual monster in the game, is not going to be back right away. Now, this is some surprising news, right? Because, it's the namesake, Diablo, but the reasoning makes a lot of sense. Now, developers said that bringing back bosses from previous Diablo games should feel organic and correct, and that there should be a reason for it, and they don't just want them to reappear just for the sake of it, right? Which makes total sense, and I'm excited to see what the developers have planned land. Now, also what's exciting about Diablo 4 is that there's gonna be 5 classes at launch. We're gonna have the Barbarian, the Druid, the Sorceress, the Rogue, and the Necromancer. Now, I'm excited to see the Rogue because that class hasn't been in previous Diablo games for some time. However, that does mean no Holy Warrior in the game at launch, such as the Monk, the Paladin, or Crusader. Those all are sort of that same theme. However, many are speculating that it will be added in at a later time, but so far there is no confirmation that there's going to be a Holy Warrior class in the game. Characters will be much more customizable, however, than ever before, allowing players to change hairstyle, eye color, skin tone, gender, scars, and so much more. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of the amount of customizability, but it's really no loss for me because I can just pick a preset, I can just hit accept through the whole customization process. And then for everyone who likes customization, it's a win for them. So I'm all for it. I think it's a cool added feature, even if I'm not really the target audience for it. Now, one of the biggest new features I've seen in Diablo 4 when I played it is the new evade ability for all classes. By pressing the spacebar, you can perform a short distance dash, which allows players to evade attacks. It's handy in Diablo 4 because monsters have abilities which can stun you, blind you, and cause other ailments that take a few seconds to perform, right? So like the boss is like preparing his swing for a few seconds, you can see it coming, and then right before it hits you, you can use evade to get out of the way before it hits you. It's similar to Diablo 3 with the ground highlighting before an ability lands there, right? You can see that in like Mortar elites or against Belial, you can see the ground sort of glowing right before an attack lands. It's going to be just like that, and you kind of had just to click out of the way, but now in Diablo 4 with evade, players now have a new quick way to get out of the way without having to use their mouse. They can just hit the spacebar button, or if you're on a different console, you'll hit that button, whatever it might be. Now, what's new in Diablo 4 also is that the maximum level is going to be 100. This is different from Diablo 2, which had a max level of 99, and different from Diablo 3, which had a max level of 70. So kind of a cool change there, kind of going back to Diablo 2 roots, having that max level near 100. Also, coming in Diablo 4, power of your character will not come mostly from items. This is kind of new. Blizzard developers have stated their goal is for it to be from a mixture of sources like skill upgrades, endgame systems like the Paragon board, leveling, and then of course items as well. I'm sort of curious to see how they're going to pull this off. I feel typically the power of your character does come from items in most Blizzard games, but I'm excited to see how they implement this ultimately with some of these endgame systems. One of those endgame systems is Renown. This is a new system in Diablo 4, which rewards players for exploring the open world. Renown can be earned through unlocking waypoints, completing side quests, finding altars of Lilith, liberating strongholds, and so much more. Within each zone, there are renown milestones, which will reward players with bonus experience and gold once they're met. These milestones grant rewards for all characters on your account and are things like skill points, extra potion charges, and Paragon points, which help make your future characters more powerful early on, which kind of increases the whole replayability of Diablo 4. Another new feature in Diablo 4, and we kind of talked about it, is altars of Lilith. You might be wondering what those are. These are spread across the open world of Sanctuary, and finding an altar permanently increases a stat of your choice for all characters on your account. Options for this include strength, dexterity, willpower, or maximum life. And of course, it is going to be for all of your characters, so it is important to choose a stat that's going to be beneficial for all future characters that you're planning on. And we'll get to what each stat does for each class a little bit later on. Now, another big new endgame system being added to Diablo 4 is the Codex of Power. This is a collection of all legendary aspects that can be unlocked and imprinted on rare or legendary items at the Occultist. Legendary aspects can be unlocked by completing dungeons, which will unlock the legendary aspect at the lowest possible roll since they are guaranteed, and then more powerful versions of the aspect can be found from item drops in the open world. This is a cool combination of features similar to Kanai's Cube with extracting a specific aspect from one item, but new to Diablo 4 by then placing it on another. It's important to mention items can only be imbued once, so it's probably worth getting a good roll on a given aspect before deciding to imprint it on one of your items. Now, primary stats, main effects are going to be different depending on the class. For example, intelligence increases sorcerer's skill damage, but has no effect for barbarians. This is something to keep in mind, once again, when choosing your permanent stat reward at the altar of Lilith, which will affect all of your characters. Each stat also has a secondary bonus, which is the same for all classes. So for example, intelligence increases all resistances regardless of your class. So stats have a primary and secondary bonus, and so if you do choose intelligence as a barbarian, you're not getting nothing, but you're only getting that secondary bonus. So something to keep in mind when choosing those stats from the Altar of Lilith. Diablo 4 is also going to be featuring a completely new skill point and skill tree system. The skill point and skill tree system in Diablo 4 is much more robust, allowing you to put a maximum of 5 points into skills rather than the 20 points like in Diablo 2, and different than getting all skill modifiers and choosing one like in Diablo 3. There are also skill upgrades and even passives to choose from. However, your choices are somewhat more limited in terms of types of skill to choose from at first. I've noticed after playing the Druid, you can't go straight to summoning. You need to learn a basic skill first, and then eventually you unlock the next type of skills to choose from, eventually reaching the companion part of the skill tree, which unlocks summons like wolves, ravens, and vine creepers. I've noticed that there's a lot of familiar spells here from past Diablo games, which is pretty cool. The skill tree also has a keyword search bar. This can be useful to identify synergies across skills. For example, if you choose a skill which benefits in damage from bleeding opponents, you can type in bleed as a keyword, and then the skill tree will highlight all skills containing the word bleed, and you can then put together a build that's based off of causing your opponent to bleed. You can even refund a single point or your entire skill tree for gold, increasing in cost as your character level increases. Early on when I was playing, it was completely free, so I imagine the cost is very low early on to encourage experimentation, find which abilities you like using, and then later on, once you know what you're doing, sort of increasing the cost to give meaning to your choices. Diablo 4 will also have a new system called the Paragon system. This is an endgame system unlocked at level 50. The goal of this system is to provide players with a huge amount of endgame customization and also to encourage replayability. Unlike the Paragon system in Diablo 3, which was almost infinite, Diablo 4's Paragon board will be capped, which is a relief. Every 25% of a level, you will unlock 4 Paragon points starting at level 50, which means roughly 200 Paragon points total to spend on the Paragon board. Each tile on the Paragon board has a different rarity, similar to items like common, magic, rare, and legendary, granting better bonuses depending on rarity. For example, common can grant +5 strength, whereas legendary might give you 30% more damage while having at least 50% of your primary resource filled. Also coming in Diablo 4, there are currently 2 game modes planned, normal and hardcore. Hardcore characters are lost permanently upon death, with no plans on converting the character to normal after dying like in Path of Exile. Offline play and solo self-found are currently not planned for Diablo 4, but haven't been completely ruled out. When it comes to grouping in Diablo 4, groups can be formed with up to a total group size of 4 players, so you and 3 others, and staying near each other will grant an XP buff based on the number of players in the group. For 1 additional player, both players will get 5% increased XP, and with each additional party member, the bonus will then go up to 8% and then 11% for a full group. Blizzard's goal is to make solo play as rewarding as group play, but if it isn't possible, they want group play to be more rewarding to encourage players to group up. However, Blizzard did want to be clear that all content progression is available regardless of if you play solo or group. Another huge feature coming in Diablo 4 is mounts. Mounts help players traverse the vast open world of Sanctuary, right? Because it's 10 to 20 times bigger. Mounts can be obtained from completing puzzles, finding hidden locations, or from specific monsters. Mounts can even equip items which grant it stats, change their appearance, or even make them move faster. Each class has a unique dismount ability which dismounts the player and performs an attack. If a player gets hit by an enemy, they are immediately dismounted and cannot perform this unique dismount attack, however. What's also new in Diablo 4 is horizontal movement. Your character can actually climb cliffs and jump over canyons when the game gives you a prompt. You can actually see a sort of glow near an area you can jump or climb, and that's sort of an indicator that that is traversable. This is a new feature when previously this kind of terrain could only be traversed by a teleport, a leap, or some other teleport-like ability by only a select number of classes. However, now all classes can get around terrain when prompted. Also coming in Diablo 4 are achievements. Achievements are called challenges in Diablo 4 and are organized into categories like class challenges, open world challenges, crafting, and more. Rewards for completing challenges include earning a title for your character, but may include more in the future. In Diablo 4, there will be clans, and these will come with a clan banner and a clan bank where you can share items. Clan leaderboards are also being explored, but are not yet confirmed. When you die in Diablo 4, you'll respawn at your last checkpoint with your gear. So unlike Diablo 2, where you had to retrieve your corpse and get your gear back, you'll always respawn with it. Now, in my opinion, this is a great change because, running back to get your corpse without move speed bonuses, right? Like over time, you get boots with move speed, chest piece with move speed, different things, right? And you lose all of that. You lose your belts, so you lose those you've got limited potion slots, and you've got no armor. And so, of course, it's a tough time going to get your body because you're surrounded by mobs that were able to kill you even with all your gear, right? So very good change in my opinion to make the game a little bit easier. And of course, if you die on hardcore mode, that character will become unplayable. Another new change coming to Diablo 4 is that the inventory is organized into 4 different tabs. You've got equipment, consumables, quest items, and aspects. Each item is the same size, taking up exactly 1 space. This is of course different from Diablo 2, with items taking more space depending on how large it actually is, and Diablo 3, where every item besides rings, amulets, and gems would take up 2 spaces. And big news for Diablo 4, each player will have their own personal loot. Like in Diablo 3, no loot thieves to worry about having to loot, as fast as you can, when you're grouped with other players like you would have to in Diablo 2. Now, itemization. Now, itemization is changing in Diablo 4. Creature types are going to have increased chances of dropping certain items. So, for example, bandits are going to have an increased chance to drop maces, crossbows, and boots, while drowned, which is sort of a type of, a zombie creature that have, climbed out of the ocean, they have an increased chance to drop pants, for example. Those are just 2, and of course other creature types are going to have increased chances of dropping different items. Also coming in Diablo 4, each weapon type will have inherent characteristics which cannot be modified. So bows, for example, deal X% bonus damage to distant enemies. Daggers deal X% bonus damage to close enemies. Staves will deal extra damage to crowd-controlled enemies, and wands give you increased lucky hit chance. And lucky hit chance is similar to chance on hit if you ever played WoW. For example, lucky hit, 25% chance to freeze enemies for 2 seconds, right? So every time you hit someone, you've got a chance to freeze them, and that's your lucky hit proc, so to speak. Also, the plus skill rank affix is coming back from Diablo 2. So like in Diablo 2, different skills roll on specific item slots. So for example, some skills will only appear on certain weapons. In Diablo 2, wands typically had necromancer skills, scepters had paladin skills, and so on. So the plus skill rank affix is coming back. Pretty excited about that one. Always loved finding a weapon with a lot of plus skill rank affix. So very excited to see that return. There's also going to be consumables in Diablo 4. Like they were in Diablo 2. Things like stamina potions, which gave you unlimited stamina to run around, thawing potions, which thawed you but also gave you some frost resistance. Diablo 4 is going to have elixirs, and elixirs are going to give you experience gain. It's 3%, and it's also going to give you an additional effect on top of that depending on the elixir. So for example, we have one here, weak iron barb elixir. This is going to increase armor by 100, thorns by 50, and experience by 3% for 30 minutes. And you can only have 1 elixir on at a time. I think this is an interesting new feature, but I'm afraid it might be a bit of a chore because it's going to be something you'll always want to have on because of that increased experience gain while leveling. So I got to refresh my elixir every 30 minutes or whatever it might be. Interested to see how this plays out, but feels like almost like an extra chore to remember to do as you play Diablo 4. We'll have to see ultimately how it pans out. Also in Diablo 4, trading will be limited. Some items will be bind on pickup, meaning they are bound to your character and cannot be traded. This is a system commonly used in World of Warcraft, preventing certain powerful items from being traded. Developers have stated the main source of items should be from killing monsters, not from trade. So I think this is actually a good change. I think botting could potentially be a problem, and you don't want to just be able to buy your best item for your character, right, from some bot, right, or whatever. So I'm glad that this system exists to potentially force players to actually play the game instead of just purchase power. Diablo 4 will also have a new gambling system, which is through the Purveyor of Curiosities. This system is important because actually the Blizzard devs have said some of the best items in the game will be available through gambling. Items can be purchased using obols, the currency earned by completing events in the world such as defending a settlement or taking down a world boss. Items can be purchased using obols, the currency earned by completing events in the world such as defending a settlement or taking down a world boss. Gems are also going to be back in Diablo 4, but are different from past games. The stat bonuses they provide depending on which item they are placed in are different than Diablo 3 and Diablo 2, so we'll have to figure out again which gem color is best to socket where for each different class. Also coming in Diablo 4 is crafting, but is different than in Diablo 2. So instead of combining items like gems, amulets, and runes in the Herodric Cube to craft an item in Diablo 2, specific materials for crafting will be found by slaying monsters or simply finding them in the open world for you to gather. Think picking a flower or mining a vein of ore in order to gather them. Blizzard mentioned that crafting will not yield the most powerful items in the game, but instead item modification will be more important. You can, however, still salvage your gear, which we will get to shortly. Also in Diablo 4, a new important NPC is added called the Alchemist. The Alchemist lets you upgrade your healing potion at set levels in exchange for materials and gold. There are several tiers of healing potion to upgrade using this system, and the Alchemist is also where you will brew those elixirs, which we talked about earlier. Another NPC coming to Diablo 4 is the Blacksmith. Similar to Diablo 3, the Blacksmith will let you salvage your gear into crafting materials, repair your items, and upgrade your items at the cost of crafting materials and gold. The Jeweler is also back from Diablo 3. If you've only ever played Diablo 2, the Jeweler takes the place of the Herodric Cube for upgrading gems, but also socketing and unsocketing gems, and even upgrading jewelry in exchange for crafting materials and gold. Also coming in Diablo 4 is Transmogrification, which allows you to change how your gear looks. This feature existed in Diablo 3, but of course not in Diablo 2. Transmogs can take place within the new wardrobe system, which allows you to mix and match your armor components and create your own custom color palettes for each part of armor individually. Lots of customization options here to make your character look exactly how you want. Also returning to Diablo 4 are elite and champion monsters, but unlike previous games, champions can only be found in nightmare difficulty. Elite affixes like Mortar, Frozen, and Waller are also returning, but also a new category of affixes unique to Diablo 4 called enhancing affixes are coming as well. These improve a monster's base powers, like causing a monster to multi-shot their attacks or resurrect multiple allies instead of just one at a time. Interested to see how this ultimately pans out, how powerful these new affixes are, but glad they're adding something new. And as you may know, world bosses are coming to Diablo 4 and come with a unique system called the Stagger system. This system causes crowd control effects to have no effect on world bosses, but rather fill up a portion of the stagger bar for the boss. Once the stagger bar is filled, the boss becomes staggered and goes into a weakened state for the rest of the fight. For example, the boss is going to drop one of his weapons once the stagger bar is filled, and once staggered again, perhaps drops the other weapon, making the fight easier. So it sort of gives some utility to crowd control instead of just making bosses immune to it, which basically makes it useless. So give some utility to crowd control, kind of cool. Also coming in Diablo 4 is PvP, but also PvPvE. This mode will have a PvE objective which needs to be completed while also being able to attack other players who are competing to complete it. Players will drop an ear when killed like in Diablo 1 and 2 as a trophy, and if your character is hardcore, Blizzard's current plans are to let you keep your character if you die through PvP. Now PvP occurs in the open world within the Fields of Hatred. The objective is to collect seeds of hatred and convert them into red dust at the altar of extraction. Doing this flags you for PvP, so beware. Red dust can be used to purchase cosmetic and mount rewards within the Fields of Hatred. If you kill a certain number of players, you will become a Vessel of Hatred, and all players will be alerted of your presence on the map. Now, if you survive a set amount of time as a Vessel of Hatred, there will be a huge reward which is currently unannounced. Also, a new world objective system will be added to Diablo 4 called the Tree of Whispers. This tree has cycling world objectives called Whispers that display on your map and reward reward experience, gold, and Grim Favors. Grim Favors can be exchanged at the Tree of Whispers for loot and experience. The Tree of Whispers unlocks through the main campaign, and once you accept a whisper from the World Tree, if you fail to complete it, the tree will actually hire people to go after you, apparently, for breaking your contract, which sounds kind of interesting. I'm not sure how they're going to pull this off, but basically sounds like this is a mafia tree. Okay, also, Nightmare dungeons are like regular dungeons, but with added difficulty. Think Greater Rifts from Diablo 3. Normal dungeons are free to enter, but Nightmare dungeons are going to require a Nightmare Sigil, which can be obtained from the Tree of Whispers, the Mafia tree. The Nightmare Sigil customizes the dungeon with the effects on the item itself, such as double bosses, or all enemies within the dungeon are invisible until they attack. Once you complete a Nightmare dungeon, you're rewarded with a more powerful Nightmare Sigil, and they will go up in power infinitely, with increasingly more rare items dropping from harder Nightmare dungeons. Now, this certainly feels like one of the endgame systems for finding endgame loot, considering Nightmare dungeons will get stronger and harder into infinity. Now, in Diablo 4, instead of difficulty modes like normal, nightmare, and hell like in Diablo 2, or torment difficulties like in Diablo 3, Diablo 4 will have world tiers. World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 are available from level 1. Tier 1 is for players new to ARPGs, and Tier 2 is for veterans of Diablo. As you progress and clear specific content, more difficult world tiers will be unlocked, leading up to a maximum world tier of 5 called Torment. Within these later world tiers, Hell Tides, which are new region-wide events that appear after reaching World Tier 3 Nightmare, will begin to appear. Monsters in the Helltide drop cinders, which is a currency used to open Helltide chests, which are scattered throughout the Helltide. These chests reward you with items exclusive to a single item slot like chest, legs, or one-handed weapons. If you die while holding cinders, they all drop where you died and will need to be reclaimed. Diablo 4 will also have seasons, aiming for 4 seasons a year, and the first one will start after the launch of the game. The season journey from Diablo 3 will return in a similar form in Diablo 4, and each season will include changes to balance, items, quests, enemies, and more. If you're not familiar with the season journey in Diablo 3, you have to go do specific objectives in order to complete the season journey, and then as you complete those objectives, you get rewards. In Diablo 3, it would be set items, it would be a pet, some cosmetic things, and so on. It would be different for each season, but that's typically how it functioned. Now, another new feature coming to Diablo 4 is a season pass, which includes cosmetic items, premium currency, and a gameplay boost known as season boosts. A paid version can be purchased, which contains premium tiers, which also includes cosmetic items and premium currency. Season boosts will accelerate a player's progress during an active season by increasing experience gains, but season boosts can't be bought with real money. Now, this whole thing gives me a sort of, it's kind of repulsive, kind of reading that off. Anything, hearing the word season boost, season pass, battle pass, paid version, premium currency, all these words just feel kind of gross to say. So we're gonna have to see how it turns out, but this is something that my sort of initial reaction is I'm kind of repelled from it. Let me know how you feel about that one in the comments below, but not feeling super good about that, but ultimately we'll have to see. Diablo 4 will also have an in-game shop where players can purchase cosmetic only items for real money. Again, this is not something I'm super crazy about, not a feature that I'm a fan of so far, but we'll have to see ultimately. Finally, we have some of the features we know from previous games that will not be in the game: our followers/mercenaries, charms, there won't be an auction house, and there also will not be single player or offline play. Currently, there are no plans to include any of these in Diablo 4, but like everything listed, it is all subject to change. And that is all I have for you this time. I know it is a lot. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.